Good day. As you can see, this is Organic Chemistry Summary, and this is summarized in the last unit of Chemistry 11. So the way we started this section was we talked about carbon chemistry. We'd just done a section on bonding, and we said, hey, carbon likes to form four bonds. If they're all single bonds, it's tetrahedral. If there's a double bond in there, it's trigonal planar. And if we have a triple bond, we're going to get a linear structure. And that can be very important to a molecule's properties. We talked about the alkanes, which are saturated, and the alkenes and alkynes, which are unsaturated. Didn't talk too much about the history. When people think about petroleum products, they tend to think of things like oil and gasoline, fuels that we often use. But from the refining of petroleum, we can get other materials as well. And those include things like polymers, things like nylon, even things like plastics, and also something like Vaseline, which was accidentally discovered many years ago. But the big focus in the section was, hey, how do we name compounds, and how do we go from a name to a structure? So that's what you're doing. You're going back and forth between these two things. So we have alkanes, alkenes, alkynes. We start with those. Then we went to cycloalkanes. And we introduced the aromatics based on benzene, the benzene ring, and of course if it's a branch, then we just change its name to phenyl or phenyl. Functional groups we got into, and so you have to deal with alcohols, ethers, aldehydes, ketones, carboxylic acids, esters, and amines. And again, you have to be able to name them properly and draw their structures. We talked about isomers. So structural isomers, we know these are basically two compounds that have the same molecular formula, but a different arrangement of the element's atoms. In other words, we've had to break and form at least one bond. We end up with, and the way we confirm we've made something different is it will have to have a different name. Geometric isomers do not apply to alkanes, because alkanes have rotational ability around their carbon-carbon single bonds. They do not apply to alkynes because there's no rotational ability, but the bigger deal is there's only one thing sticking out of the end on the carbons involved in a carbon-carbon triple bond. So they apply to alkenes, but not all alkenes, only certain alkenes, and that's something you have to understand. And the result would be cis and trans isomers. But some alkenes will not have cis and trans isomers. Types of reactions we looked at were combustion and substitution, addition, esterification, for sure you're going to have to know. Oxidation we're not going to worry about. And we have nucleophilic substitution. Talked briefly about polymers, and that pretty well wrapped up the section. So these things are not formally assigned, but they certainly are good practice if you're trying to get thoroughly prepared for the test. And of course, there'll be a lot of organic on the final exam. So if you've put it together for organic, the payoff is you'll be ready for it when we do get in the final. Now, remember, the summary is more like a table of contents. If you find areas you're weak at, yes, you're not going to get the answers to the summary. You've got to go back into your notes, rewatch videos if necessary to make sure you're fully prepared. And if in doubt, ask questions. Get on top of this early. You should be preparing for this test along with the final exam.